From the OG Living Studios in sunny South Florida via Nashville, Tennessee. Heard all over the world on the iHeartRadio network or wherever you get your streaming content. It's the Nashville Hype with your host, Paul King.
The Nashville Hype is brought to you by Fantasy Song Pitch, a place where songwriters can pitch their songs to all their favorite artists, only at fantasysongpitch.com. You're listening to the Nashville Hype with my special guest, Ray Scott. When did you first get into Nashville?
Oh, man. I've been in Nashville since the end of 93. So, it would have been the first time I came to Nashville or came through Nashville would have been probably 92. I've lived a couple of lifetimes here, been through a couple of marriages, done the music row thing, the independent thing. I've kind of been all over the map. So.
Yeah. Did you come here specifically for music?
Oh, yeah, for sure, yeah.
But did you?
I went to Atlanta. I was in a band, my first band in Raleigh, North Carolina, not long before that. And kind of figured out if I wanted to take this seriously, I was going to need to learn a lot more about the industry and the business. And so I ended up, after the band sort of split up, I ended up going down to Atlanta, went to the Art Institute, got a little degree in like a music business program, which, they have that same school here in Nashville now. But, and that was kind of a stop along the way to learn a little bit. But yeah, I came to Nashville with the intent of making it in the music business. Been here ever since. Did you
end up working odd jobs, or did you immediately go into the music business?
Well, I worked some odd jobs at first to pay the bills. It took me, let's see. I mean, I was in town, I think 3.5 years before I got my first publishing / developmental deal. With Acuff Rose Music at the time. They've since been bought by Sony. Mm-hmm. So Sony owns the catalog these days. Yeah, I happened to have a chance meeting with a guy named Nora Wilson, who was a well-known producer at the time. He wrote some big songs back in the 70s. And, him and Buddy Cannon, Buddy to this day still, I think, produces Kenny Chesney. Buddy and Noro kind of took me under their wing and sort of got my foot in the door on Music Row. And, so that was my first foray into it.
Okay. Yeah, you ended up signing with Warner Brothers Records. What year did you sign with them?
I signed with them, I think, in about 2004. And, I was, lucky enough to have a release with those guys within about a year from that, which is pretty unheard of.
Something else that's unheard of is you wrote and or co-wrote every song on that album. And the most impressive thing about that is many of the songs on that album are solo rights, which even today is just impressive in the sense that there's not very many solo rights getting cut.
Well, yeah, it's true. I mean, of course, me being the artist, it was, obvious I was going to cut my own songs. But it's tougher, honestly, man, as a solo writer on songs. It's a lot tougher to get them recorded by other artists, for sure, because, politically you're kind of shooting yourself in the foot because, when you co-write, one of the things with co-writing here in town is, obviously you got more than one head thinking about it, but also each publishing company or each contact or whatever else that each writer is affiliated with is all going to be part of the attempt to get it recorded. So you got more people working your song, when you have co-writers. But I've always been, of course, I've had recordings and songs cut by other artists that I've written, but it was never my full intent to have that career. I always wanted to make records, and but I was always driven by my own writing and kind of the window I was looking out of. And obviously the single rights are good all day long. And man, I'm looking at my 10th and 11th project coming here pretty soon, and I've pretty much co-written or written alone everything I've ever recorded, aside from a covers album that I did 5, 6, 7 years ago. But co-writing is something that politically helps tie you in, and it kind of increases your chances of of success and more ears actually being exposed to your music here in town. And it helps you, to maybe get other artists to cut your songs and things heard, because like I said, you got more people working your music for you. I've always, written, I think, well by myself, for myself, but it doesn't help you very much when it comes to, having a big, necessarily a team of people out there pushing it for you, because there are less people who stand to benefit from the profits.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So
Yeah.
these days, man, I mean, because of streaming and some other things that happen in the business these days, man, these writers, they're not getting the income that they used to.
No, they're not.
So some of these guys are having to literally go out and change careers. I know a guy that's selling cars. I know a couple of other guys that are, in real estate now. And it's sad. Hey, look, everything runs its course.
Yeah.
But, the issue here is that obviously, man, we had the 90s country era was what brought me to town. And the gold rush that was going on back then obviously is not happening now. So, no. But the songwriters were making money off of mechanical royalties back then, off of record sales, and so that doesn't happen anymore.
Do you have a certain process that you use in songwriting? Do you get the hook first, the title first, the melody first? When you sit down, how does it happen for you?
There's really no set formula. It seems maybe sometimes to come the easiest when I already when I have the idea or the hook first, title, whatever. Because usually a lyric, if it's something that is truly inspired, I can usually take it and run with it fairly quickly and fairly easily. I may come back to it later and tweak it and do some editing and maybe improve on a line or three. But that's kind of most of the time where they come from. But honestly, sometimes I'll sit down and I'll just play something just by chance on the guitar that spurs something on. So it's not really the same every time.
Yeah.
But usually I have to have a pretty good idea that at least gets me excited about continuing to bang it out.
You write from a personal sense on a lot of your songs. Is that correct, or am I wrong on that?
Yeah, for sure. Really on any given day, it's whatever comes to you. But I learned a long time ago, kind of when I started to really recognize the things about other songs that drew me in and made me such a fan of the format and certain artists or whatever. And through doing so, I realized that was because they were being completely honest in their songwriting. And early on, you can learn to write songs, you can learn the craft of it. If you got it in you, but after a while, you've got to really be able to apply it on a personal level. I think for other people to be able to relate to it. You can string words and lines together all day long that make sense and that rhyme and everything else. But I think most things come from most of the good stuff comes from a personal place. Now there's also a lot of great storytelling in country music that may or may not kind of have that quality. But, from an emotional standpoint, there's a lot of self-awareness going on there, self-examination. There's a lot of, man, I really was stupid back then, and I learned this from this and whatever else. And that's part of life, and so I just try to be honest in writing and keep account of that. And I find that, some of the more honest, bare your heart type songs are the ones that appeal to people the most.
Yeah, that's interesting, because as a writer myself, I write stories that have nothing to do with me.
When you go through some heavy stuff in your life and I don't know how old you are, what kind of where you've been.
52. I'm 52 and grew up in Hendersonville, Tennessee.
Okay, well, that's where I live, and I'm the same age as you are. So
okay.
Yeah, I live right up here on the lake.
Okay, great. Yeah,
so,
I was born and raised basically in the music industry. My father was always on television and radio, and they were Southern.
Cool.
They were a Southern gospel group, and they were known pretty much all over the Southeast.
Well, that's cool to know. And I see you know my friend Cassandra too.
Yeah, she's the one that recommended that you that I reach out to you to have you on the show. And I appreciated that. And she just left a comment overnight that was like, Ray is the best. He's the greatest. He's one of the best songwriters in the world. Has one of the best voices in the world. I mean, she's effusive in praise, and I can see why. After spending the last couple of weeks, listening to your music, and of course, I have had those genes on the Nashville Hype Radio. I've had that on there since pretty much the beginning.
I've heard of death, man. We go back a good ways, and we've worked together at one company. She was a song plugger for us, and I was a writer.
Okay.
So I've known her since before I got my deal at Warner Brothers. So I've known her over 20 years.
Oh, wow. Yeah, we went to high school together, Cassandra and I, and graduated the same year, 1988. And I didn't really know her very well. Fast forward years later, in about 2006, I was doing a benefit for families of fallen firefighters out in California. And I just started reaching out to people in Nashville that, might be interested in helping. And she was someone, I can't remember what publishing company she was working for at the time, but she was someone that I just happened to reach out to, not even knowing that we went to high school together and graduated together. And she did the most amazing thing. She got Charlie Daniels to donate a gold fiddle in a box. And it was the most amazing gift that you can even imagine. Like, as far as a raffle thing, people really were excited to see his gold fiddle in a box. That was just really cool. She really did come through for that event, and from that moment, that's when I learned that we went to high school together, and she was in publishing and all of that stuff. So really, really sweet individual for sure.
Absolutely, she's always been one of my favorite people, man. We still we don't see each other very often anymore, but we still make a point to try to at least get coffee every now and again. Life moves fast, and we live on opposite ends of town, but, she's awesome.
Do you write every single day, or what is the process of your writing? Do you wake up and say, okay, I have to write a song today, or I have a project coming up that I have to get done? Do you put pressure on yourself to write, or is it just come as it comes?
It comes as it comes. I don't put pressure on myself to write, because I've learned over the years. One of the things I think about songwriting is, and being successful at it, or at least kind of getting to a point where you're decent at it, is okay. You can get to the point where you can, I'll never say I've mastered the craft, but you get to a point where you at least know how to put them together. And but you also realize that it's all about the idea. It's all about the slant. It's all about the hook. And sometimes it's a musical hook. Sometimes it's not always a clever spin on words, or you never know. But
yeah.
So I don't make a point. I never wake up and say, okay, I have to write today. Now, every now and again, obviously, when I'm maybe starting to think about a new project, or just working on something new, I'll go through, I'll make a point to make myself go through old memos I put in my phone. That's the best thing about these smartphones, man. Obviously you can type in lyrics, you can add a vocal, just a little recording. So it's an awesome tool. But so I'll go through that, and I'll see kind of what, all these ideas, kind of what may still stand out to me, if there's anything that looks like I should jump on and pursue any further. I've partially, I don't want to call it a lazy approach, but there have been some that I've had half of written for 4 years, and then all of a sudden, because of one thing or another, the rest of it falls out. Like just recently, I finished recording a second project that I'm about to release. Mm-hmm. And one of the songs on it is one that I've had a verse and a chorus for, probably for 8 years. But it's, and I never bothered to write the rest of it, because, to be honest, it's kind of a goofy song. If you like those genes and you like those types of songs, I've got a new record I'm about to put out. It's called Wrong Songs, and it's
okay.
It's in parentheses, musings from the shallow end, and there were a couple of songs, actually, as a matter of fact, on this project that weren't finished songs. Mm-hmm. Until about maybe 2 or 3 months ago.
Oh, wow.
And,
okay.
yeah. So, and it was just, for the sake of getting them done. And I think timing wise, it just now was the time to get that done. And so it put me in that mind frame. And then all of a sudden, a couple of these tunes got finished.
Yeah, I was working on one back when Waylon was alive, and I heard just maybe 2 or 3 months ago, I heard a Morgan Wallen song, and it just reminded me in some way of that song I had started way back when, and like you said, the rest of it literally fell out. Like, it literally just fell out. And, back then, I had worked on it, and I had struggled and tried, and I had done everything that I knew creatively to kind of make the song work. And I had sang it to myself, throughout the years. I wake up and I think about it. But I thought, man, I'm never going to finish this thing. And bada bing, it literally I just woke up one day after hearing it was either Hardy or Morgan Wallen. It was one of those people. It might have been Ernest. I don't know. I heard something that they were doing, and I went, oh, okay. And literally, the thing just fell out, and now it's completed, and I feel good that it is completed because, some of those things, some songs can linger in the back of your head and kind of crawl under your skin, if that makes any sense.
Oh, yeah, for sure. And I mean, and it's not a written rule, with me that everything has to get done right away. I mean, there have been some that have been over the course of a few years as opposed to a few minutes. I think my biggest hit as a songwriter was a song called A Few Questions that Clay Walker had in the top 10 a few years ago. And I had co-writers on that. And, there were 3 of us on that one. And I know we banged on it a few different sessions. We finally got it right. But, it's not something that happened right away. But, of course, when you have more than one writer, especially if you've got 3, there's going to be some differing opinions that force people to sort of meet in the middle here and there. It also kind of forces you to maybe dig a little deeper, reach a little further.
Right.
But that's not, it's not true of every situation, but it definitely, it'll definitely help in some situations. So there's really no one way of doing it right. I think it's just, whatever gets you to that end result that makes everybody high five and say, hey, we got a great one here.
Yeah, when I was first starting out as a songwriter, I got put in a room with 2 guys, one named Joe Beck and another named Brian White. And the Brian White is a songwriter, not the artist. But these guys had won a double award for Song of the Year, and we were going to write a Christian song. And I was pretty new. I mean, I was pretty raw. And I just got run over in that I just got completely ran over in that session, man, because those guys wrote together practically every single day at Benson Music Group. And, I don't know, a friend of mine actually worked there, and that's how I got that in order to meet with them. And, I don't know that I learned the lesson of 3 writers versus 2, but I certainly do better with one more writer other than myself. And I definitely do better writing by myself than I do with 3 in the room. I was looking at this first album that you put out on Warner Brothers, and who is Philip Moore? I do not know that name, but he has a lot of cuts with you.
Yeah, well, he just produced and played guitar on this latest thing I just did, this Wrong Songs record. Okay. Philip is a guy from Arkansas. He's our age as well.
Okay.
He's from a little town called Hoxie, Arkansas, and I met him years ago here in town. I think I met him around the time I had my first publishing deal, and a friend of mine named Ken Harrell, who Cassandra also knows, introduced Philip and myself, and we got together, started trying to write a little bit. Second song we ever wrote was called Fly With an Angel, and it ended up on the first album. And and Philip was just a great guitar player, a very musical guy, and very he's good with a lyric, but he also was good with hearing a lyric and knowing if it was right or it wasn't. And he recognized something in me early on, and so Philip kind of lyrically, at least with me, I mean, realizing it was an artist thing that I was trying to do, he kind of lyrically took a back seat and just kind of allowed me to run with that. And, now and again, he would challenge me on some things if he thought they could be better or tweaked a bit. But, what he brought to the situation was just this really great musical sense
Okay.
He had a style of playing guitar that was really cool, that helped forge a sound for me early on. And he was just, just when it came to musical instincts, I mean, he was just the best partner to have in the world. And so we wrote pretty much everything together if it wasn't something I wrote by myself. And, and that was the way it was. I mean, I've recorded something that I've written with him on most of my albums.
Mm-hmm.
We're still good friends to this day. He's one that, honestly, man, the experience we had with Warner Brothers, Philip put basically almost all of his eggs in my basket as we were kind of getting that deal going. And Philip went out on the road with me. He was my guitar player, band leader. He was really trying to help make this thing happen. And, politically, things at Warner Brothers got weird because of musical chairs and that whole deal.
Yeah. I was going to ask if that was a drop or did you leave?
Well, I mean, it was essentially a drop, but I had been trying to leave for over a year before that happened.
Oh, wow.
It ended up being them making the decision to let me go. But that was mainly because Scott Hendricks came in and took took over the top spot that Bill Bennett had occupied there while I was there for the majority of the time. Got to a point with him where we put that first album out, and the song "My Kind of Music" was a top 40 hit for me, but it was also a very polarizing song, and we had half the people at radio all about it, and the other half wouldn't touch it, and they were meeting some resistance, and of course we got into the whole situation with, hey, we know we got something here, let's make a second record and try again or whatever. And but they started trying to change me and change what I was recording and things like that. And, so it went downhill. So I was trying to get out of that situation. So when Hendrix came in, he kind of does what they do. They assess everybody that's on the roster. And he saw what had happened before, and he also heard some of the new stuff we'd recorded, and just made the decision to go ahead and let me go. And I was happy about that.
Yeah, gratefully, right.
Yeah, I mean, and I've been very, content and satisfied ever since then, being independent, realizing that what I'm doing is not, supported or being pushed by the big machine. But, here I am, about to release album 10 and 11, 52 years old, and still running up and down the road doing it exactly the way I want to do it. So it's kind of hard to beat,
Who produced that album, the first album on Warner Brothers? Because you have Barry Beckett on there.
So Buddy Cannon produced it with Philip Moore.
Okay.
Barry played keys.
Yeah.
Now, he didn't actually play on the album as we were tracking it. Barry played on a song called Plowboy, which is a song that got me my record deal. And we ended up just using the demo from that song because we felt like the demo had some magic on it. We tried to re-record it, but it just didn't feel the same.
Oh, yeah.
So Barry is credited there, and it was really great having him on it because, he's just got this feel, man. I mean, just what he does or did with his left hand on the keyboards was killer.
People don't realize, but Barry Beckett, everything that you hear from basically, I would want to say the 60s on, coming out of Rick Hall's fame, you can directly attribute to Barry. And I was in the studio with Eddie Rabin, and Barry was the producer of Eddie. And Scott it's interesting, but Scott Hendricks was the engineer for Barry for a long time. And it's funny because I also see that you had Eddie Bears on drums, and he just went into the Hall of Fame, and he was playing drums on that session. And who else you had? Eddie Bears. Michael Rhodes. You had Michael Rhodes on bass, and he was also in that session. So we had a mix of people. It wasn't all the same guys on every song. Because honestly, it depended on the day we tracked. And like I said, some of the songs, a small handful of them, including Plowboy, were the demo. So where did you record it at?
Oh gosh,
do you remember?
Sound Emporium.
Oh, okay.
I think a lot of it. I believe, but if I'm not mistaken, that's that's been 17 years.
You're right. It's been a hot minute, right? But do you have a studio in your home now? Is that where you're doing your recording, or where do you record your new albums or songs?
I don't have one in my house. I've never been that techie guy. If I thought I had to sit behind the console, well, obviously these days you can do it in the box, but that's just not part of my makeup. I mean, I do have some. I've got a pretty pretty simple little setup that I use to just document things and whatever else. But I use like for instance the latest full-length album I just recorded, which would come out later in 2023. It's called Billboards and Brake Lights. Now I recorded that with Jim Moose Brown.
Okay, yeah.
You may know who Jim is.
Oh yeah.
And and that was at his studio called the Moose Lodge, and it's it's probably, I don't know, about 8 miles away from where I live. He lives over kind of in, I guess White House is his address, but he's up in the country, man, up in the hills up that way, and it's just a really beautiful place. But, so I used his place, and then this, this latest thing, the Wrong Songs thing that I'm about to release, I did with Philip Moore up, and he lives out in Smyrna, and that, and his place is called Railroad Tracks Productions, and so I do, I kind of jump around. I like doing that. I like trying different places. Yeah. But I was never one of those guys that, self-produce. Now I do co-produce because I obviously by now have a lot of ideas and a lot of input on the records and how they get made, who's playing and what solo sounds the best and that kind of stuff. So, and I also do a lot of my own harmonies and things like that. So but I don't do it from home. Yeah. Now I do have my little man cave, and I do write here, and I do my video content here, a lot of it. I do my live streams here and that kind of thing. But I don't record any. No real master recordings come out of my place.
Yeah. Well, I was talking to Jeff McCool on the show a couple of episodes back, and he used to release full-length albums. I think he did 10 or 11, and he's always been independent except for when he was with Average Joe's, which is also an independent label. But he was saying that he's no longer going to be doing albums, and I found it really interesting. And he's like, he said, even myself, if somebody releases an album, I just go on and I find the 2 or 3 songs that I like from the album, and those are the ones that I purchase. And it's leading to album sales have been dwindling for quite a while. I find it really interesting that he has 12 videos right now, or 12 songs in the pipeline that he's just releasing singles and see if they stick or see if they hit or if they don't. That's his approach, and he's like, we finally worked it out, and we're making more money than we ever made, and we're finally doing really well. Not recording another extra 7 songs. We record the song, we get a video, and we've got a schedule for release. And I find it interesting. You're still releasing full-length albums.
I agree with that. I mean, I also know that, myself included, there are a lot of people out there that still like the concept of an album. Everything has become so singles based that, obviously, okay, if you put something out there that becomes a hit, or at least a hit with people. Now, I'm not, saying with the chart success or not. If it's a hit with people and they share it, then that's a step forward. My thought is, and especially with this new release I'm coming with now, I mean, some of these songs are ridiculous, but not unlike the song "Those Jeans." When that came out years ago, man, I didn't have a record deal. I didn't have anything going on. I was going to Europe some and playing, and I'd go over there for 3 weeks at a time, make a nice chunk of money, come back in, and have 3 or 4 months worth of bills paid. I took that song to John Marks at the time at Sirius XM, and John had been the program director at KSON in San Diego back when I was with Warner Brothers. He was one of my top 5 supporters when My Kind of Music was out. So I knew I had a supporter in him, so I wanted to take him the song to see what he thought. Well, he loved the song. He thought it had a lot of potential, so he made it a highway find, if you know what I'm talking about.
No, exactly what you're talking about.
Well, Well, I went from having nothing going on, no promotional dollars, no nothing, to him playing that song 45 times a week on the highway.
Oh, wow.
And all of a sudden, you know, it blew up.
Yeah.
And so all of a sudden I had this sort of a resurgence in my career, and based on the success of that song. Now, the reason I bring that up is because I knew that song when I wrote it. It made me laugh. Mm-hmm. And I knew that based on anything I had, and I thought I had a lot of good songs for one reason or another, but I knew that a song like that would, not everybody would like it, but some people would love it. And at the end of the day, whether they liked it or loved it, it was so different that they were going to talk about it. It was going to be one of those water cooler type things.
Yeah.
And I knew early on, I just had the intuition as an independent, thinking, okay, well, I hear a lot of good independent artists putting out good songs, a lot of serious songs, but nothing that really stood out and made me think, holy shit, that's different, or you know. So I knew this one had that potential, and and luckily we were right about it. That thing sold a few 100,000 at the time downloads on iTunes.
Yeah,
and just put me in a totally different position. I was able to go start working again, and then then John supported me on the second on the album after that with a song called "Drinking Beer." And
love that song. I was going to bring that song. I was going to bring that song up for. That's one of my favorite songs. I love the video, and there's a guy out. A new song came out maybe 3 or 4 or 5 weeks ago, and it's called "Twerking at the Hoedown," and I thought, man, did they take the music from this song, from Drinking Beer, and just copy it or slow it down? Really? Yeah. So yeah,
I'll have to look that up.
Yeah, it's a fun song. Those people are having a blast, and it's so funny because it's country rap, and there's people that don't like it and just hate it and everything else, but there's no question that these people in this video, twerking at the hoedown, are having the time of their lives. But yeah, I mean, it literally has the sound of Drinking Beer. But I love Drinking Beer song.
Well, it's funny, man. I grew up on a lot of great music, but I'm highly as much influence as Waylon and Don Williams and those guys have on me. I'm just as influenced by Jerry Reed and Roger Miller and people like that put out this kind of tongue-in-cheek,
Amos Moses,
very, very well-written stuff, but just on the funny side. And look, hey, music is entertainment, and it's funny. I've even caught crap from a couple of artist friends of mine for putting out some of these comical, less than serious tunes every now and again. But it's just like what I was getting at a while ago is that when you're independent like this. Your goal is to put something out there, I think, that's going to make people turn the other way.
Make them talk.
No matter what level of this you're on, you got to have something that stands out, man. At the end of the day, it's all about the song. And this doesn't have to be rocket science. It doesn't have to be, life-affirming, world-changing lyrics. It has to be something that makes people feel something. And I've been lucky enough to latch on to some things with a handful of songs that just make people laugh and follow them line by line. And it's just that, at the end of the day, I've had more success with that type of stuff. And that's what enables me to keep going out there. And for every person that discovers me because of one of these type songs, then they have the ability to go and dig into my catalog and realize that there's a lot of serious stuff in there that goes a little deeper. And and so that's my MO. That's the way I realize it needs to be, because it's easier, and I say, I knock on wood here, but it's easier to cut through the masses with something that that's quirky and different and just gets people's attention for whatever reason. I mean, this Wrong Songs record I'm putting out, and I know some people are going to listen to it and roll their eyes, but I also know that other people are going to laugh at it and take it for what it is. And
it has 100,000 or something, 150,000 views on YouTube. It seems to have done well. I think it's
like 105 or something like that over the course of a couple of weeks. That's actually pretty good. So yeah. I mean, so you realize, that those things matter. And I even saw a comment on the video a couple of days ago saying, "Hey, this is the first song I've heard by this guy, but I like him." And I'm sitting there thinking, God, this is the first song of mine you've ever heard. I just had to laugh, Do
you tour on these full length albums? In other words, do you perform the entire album in a live show?
No. It's my live performances are, like I said, I'm about to release 10 and 11 here, so. There is obviously a timeline of a lot of material that I have, and I've picked up certain fans along the way. I mean, there's some that have been with me from day one, and they want to hear the old stuff, and so I do play a little bit of that, and
they would be mad if they went to your show and they didn't hear the song that they wanted to hear. They would probably be ticked off, right?
And needless to say, no matter how much I try to play what I think everybody wants to hear, there's always, one or two that people come up afterwards. Well, man, I sure wish you would have played so and so. And I was like, well, you should have hollered it out. Especially if I do a lot of acoustic shows. So, I can pull off most things off the cuff. If people have requests at the last minute, it's not a big deal. Now with the band. The band stuff here lately, we kind of follow a pretty strict, not strict, but fairly close set list, most of the time. And some of the members are still fairly new these days. And so it's not like they can just pull certain songs out of their memory. I mean, so they're, So some requests just can't be done with these guys.
How long is your show?
We do mostly 90s.
90s. Okay. Wow.
Yeah. I mean, if I'm opening, like last week, I did an opening spot with Eddie Montgomery in Ohio, and that was a 60.
Okay. So you're still doing an hour as an opening. Wow.
Yeah. Now and again, I don't get a lot of opening spots these days. If it's something that makes sense. Obviously, man, you always still want to take every opportunity to get in front of new people. So
right.
So if it makes sense, I mean, most of the time these opening spots for a lot of people they just don't pay anything hardly at all.
Right.
So it either makes sense to try to do it from a business standpoint or it doesn't. But most of what I'm doing these days are headlining spots, but it's smaller venues and being independent, we also book from in-house. I don't have the big power booking agency behind me.
I was going to ask about that as well.
Yeah, I mean, so it's challenging, man. I mean, it's and I haven't really been a creature of Music Row per se in a long time, a lot of years, and so I kind of figured out years ago that it felt like what was coming out of Music Row and going to radio just existed in a world that I wasn't comfortable in and that I didn't relate to very much. And you don't want to be a guy that's, I didn't want to feel like I was competing with everybody coming out of Music Row because, I wasn't playing the same game. I wasn't on the same field, as these folks. I was doing things the way I wanted to do them, but, in doing so, I was a little bit on my own island.
Yeah.
And I have been. And so it's, it's easier for me to just kind of, I mean, look, Nashville or the, Nashville area anyway, Hendersonville it's home base for me and it's where I conduct my business from, but I'm not really one that, that would claim to be, I don't go out and necessarily like getting introduced as a Nashville recording artist Ray Scott.
Yeah.
Because, I honestly play all over the world.
Yeah. So, I was gonna. You mentioned Eddie Montgomery, playing a show with Eddie Montgomery, and it reminded me of Kevin Montgomery, and that's Bob's.
I remember Kevin. I remember Bob. I met Bob. Yeah.
Yeah. So Kevin has done something that you have started to do, and I don't know how many years you've been doing it, but Kevin tours all over, like Germany, England, France. Like he's a really big world traveler, and you started touring, I don't know when, but you're doing overseas stuff a lot more. Is that right?
Yeah, I've been doing that now for about 10 or 12 years.
Okay.
And, I'm heading back over, as a matter of fact, at the beginning of February. I've been playing, well, aside from when COVID was a big deal. I've been playing this festival in Zurich, Switzerland every February, which is kind of the anchor gig, and I'll go over and then we'll go to Germany and Austria, a couple other spots. And so that's, I'm doing that again coming this February, right after I do the country cruising thing, which is a week-long cruise, I'm all over the place, man. That's for me a grind. Doing the cruise and coming back home, and then 2 days later leaving for Europe. That's I know when I get home from Europe, I'm gonna be ready to take a nap.
Yeah, you're gonna be sore.
Yeah, man.
Yeah. Well, it doesn't get any easier, I guess, as the older you get. But you're still booking all of these? Is that right? Like when you go overseas, you've got to book Germany and you've got to book Switzerland and you've got to do that all by yourself, right?
Well, I've got a guy named Jay DeSoto that does some stuff for me. I mean, he's actually a guitar player. I have a band that I meet up with when I go to Europe. So I haven't taken my band over in a few years now. After a while, it just, financially, it just didn't make sense. And it's, and I hate that that's the deal, but it just, it just made more sense to kind of, this band, they call it the EU band, and they're great players, and they play a good show with me, and so it's fun to kind of go over there, and that's the great thing about touring and just doing music in general is no two shows are the same, and still to this day I'm going into so many new markets that I've never played in before, and that's my favorite thing to do is play a new venue in front of new faces, man, and
yeah, because you're still working, you're winning over people all the time. That's the whole goal of it. And people, it's so funny to me. I was talking about this with another friend of mine. The idea nowadays is you get signed to a record label and the work for you stops, and the record label just does everything for you. And I'm like, this is not how the world works. The world works on the grind. You have to be on the grind. People get to the NFL, their next grind is to get to the Super Bowl. And so this idea of some newer artists going, I got signed to this label or I got signed to something, that's not the end of it. That's really the new beginning. That's where the work starts, man. You do. A lot of people do think they got it made when they get the record deal. Well, that's not true. If you get a record deal and I was lucky when I went to Warner because timing wise, it was good because they were in the midst of, switching over. Jim Ed Norman had just left, and he'd been there for years and years. Paul Worley was new in there. And I came in at a time when they had room and they had the time schedule wise to release new people. Now, everybody that gets a record deal, no matter what artist no matter what label that they're with, as soon as they get that deal, you get into a situation where you're essentially in competition with all the other artists that want to be in favor and be the next one to get the release, and as a company, everything these days, everything is decided by committee. These people sit in these meetings and, essentially, say, hey, I'm excited about this guy and this song. Let's go with this one and blah, blah, blah. So there's some people that get a record deal and end up sitting there for years without a release because whatever reason they're not in the favor of the people working there. And so having a record deal and having a label sit on you like that, that can be extremely frustrating. And I know one guy who was signed to Warner for 11 years. Oh, wow.
Before he finally got out of there. And they tried to release a couple of songs on him along the way, and the singles fail, and then they just sit on him more. It was like Curb Records, same deal. Curb's kind of notorious for having people sign forever and never letting them out,
Yeah.
So it was, hey, I was lucky, to get the opportunity with Warner. I got a top 40 hit, which was, enabled me to at least start a fan base back then. And not only that, when we, when things sort of cooled off with them, they at least let me go and didn't just hold on to me and trap me, because if you got a record deal and you don't have a record out on the market, it's not like you can go and just sell one. Everything that you would record or do would be owned by the label, so you're stuck.
Yeah, you're stuck. Yeah, I had some friends. I was working Nashville Hype before I was doing the podcast. It started as a blog in like 2006, and I was showcasing artists, and a couple of the artists were, getting a lot of attention and stuff. It just happened that the first person that I ever wrote about, or the first band, was Lady Antebellum, who go by Lady A. And that was the first band that I don't know that I helped them, but they ended up getting a record deal. And through that process, there was 9 artists that either got signed or some kind of record deal or publishing deal, management deal or something like that. But one band in particular was going to sign with Sony Records. And I was like, do not do this. And because it was kind of a development deal and let them go in the studio, record some songs and write and things of that nature. And I'm like, this is such a bad deal for you guys. Yeah. Well, it turned out that really Sony was signing them to get them off the market because Sony had a similar band that they wanted to release. And so, they basically they took the competition off the market is what happened. And they just languished in the development deal that didn't go anywhere, and they never got a release. And, the album that they did put together finally never got approved for a release, and it was a real show, and that's the record business. People don't understand. That's how the record business works sometimes.
Well, and that reminds me, the story I'll tell you. I'm not going to say who it was, but when I signed before I signed with Warner, there was another label that told me we were going to do a deal. Now they didn't drop the contract in my lap, but they strung me along for a while. And we thought, my publisher, everybody, we thought we were going to be making a record with this particular label. Well, it turns out after the fact that they were just stringing me along so that they had time to release another artist they had on that label who happened to, he didn't, artistically, we're not really very similar at all, but he had a deep voice.
Yeah.
And I think they were just more concerned about getting him out there so that radio would favor him since he came along first and sort of get his heels dug in, so to speak, before I had a chance to come out with my songs.
Right.
And so after the fact, I found out, that's kind of what happened there. They just were trying to hold you up so you didn't present a challenge for them, by basically putting music out at the same time as what they were doing with that guy.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a, and that's a tough lesson to learn, man. I mean, it didn't occur to me that could even be something that somebody would pull, and, hey, shame on me for not realizing that, that music rose a snake pit. But yeah, I mean, so that, look, the culmination of all your experiences in this business should teach you something. And, how bad you want to be a star, and that's the word star, was always, to be honest with you, was always kind of a word that rubbed me a little bit wrong because I always considered myself more of an artist. I always just felt like it was I don't know. I almost had like a blue collar approach to the idea of doing it. It's good work if you can get it kind of thing. I mean, it's something that I just felt like I could be good at when I was younger, and just thought the idea of doing it for a living sounded like the way to go. And the whole trying to beat everybody else out for the amount of attention you got was never something that occurred to me or was something that was high on my list. So, I think, the big labels too, they like to see the guys and the girls come in there that are just so hungry to be famous.
Yeah.
They'll do anything.
We'll do anything. Right.
I just really wasn't that guy. And I'm still not. I mean, I enjoy putting out my music and I enjoy people enjoying my music. I enjoy going out and playing the music, but I'm not all about putting on airs and saying, look at me, look at me, look at me. That's always been a part of it that's been a little uncomfortable for me, and it didn't really fit my my agenda or my personality. So it's obviously it's been a factor along the way that obviously probably has made it more challenging for me, because I was never necessarily in the mindset that this is such a huge competition between me and all these other artists for attention. It is a competition for attention at a record label, or just in this business on the grand level. That's just the way it is, man. Yeah,
and you wrote "Smiling on My Way" as kind of a see you later to the town.
That's one of my sentimental favorites. It's not like I kind of lived that song a few years ago, to be honest with you. Now, I didn't go back to North Carolina, as the song implies, but I kind of, came up here to Hendersonville, and I got married. My wife, Stacy, and I, man, we just lead a kind of a normal life and a quiet life. We stay home a lot. When I'm not on the road, I'm here, hanging out with her and the dogs and enjoying things. I don't go downtown, I don't do any of that stuff, but it's just a nice way to make a living. I tell people I'm not laughing all the way to the bank, but I definitely ain't crying all the way to work. So
yeah, and that's an enviable place for a lot of people to be in. You get to do what you love, and you still love to do, and it sounds like you're still having a lot of fun doing it.
Yeah.
Yeah. How do you, when you travel, do you travel in bus, or are you in vans? Like how is your tour travel?
Well, the bus thing is rare these days, unless we're doing the full band thing, and it's a good, long run that justifies the expense. These days when I've been out, I'll lease something or rent something to kind of accommodate a bigger group of guys. But right now, man, I do a lot of acoustic shows, and I've got this, this hopped up little Toyota Sienna minivan that's got some cool looking wheels on it, and we hit the road, and it's comfortable and gets decent mileage, and I could put 500,000 miles on it, and so that's the way I do it. What I'll do is I'll get out there and I'll tour, and I'll make my runs based on obviously distance. I'm not traveling overnight, so what we're doing is taking off, doing a few hours and staying in hotels. And these days, I actually kind of prefer that. And I think, if I were a record label or I were someone who was going to get involved with an artist or a band, from a financial standpoint and looking to have a return on my money and that kind of thing, if they pulled up in a bus, especially if it was early on, the first thing I would probably think is, geez, they sure like spending a lot of money.
Oh, yeah. And it's my money that they'd be spending. So.
Exactly. So, so if I see somebody pull up in a van, or whatever, look, you realize who's in it who's in it because they love it, who's in it because they bleed it, they eat, sleep, and breathe it, and who's in it for, the wrong reasons. Because, look, man, I've seen a lot of people who got into this, and after they realized that it ain't as easy or glamorous as they thought it would be, or it didn't happen fast enough, man, they ran for the hills.
Yeah, it's work.
And that's where you separate the men and the boys and the women and the girls. You know what I mean?
It's work. There's work involved.
It's that exactly. And people don't even realize sometimes what amount of work and sacrifice and compromise goes into doing this. Now, folks like me, I'm used to it. I love it. It's I've been able to call my own shots for a long time now, and I've had help from some great people along the way, some people who believed in me, and were able to kind of fill some voids that needed filling as far as knowledge and ability to, to do social media and to do certain types of promotion and publicity and things like that, and without, it's never one person that's getting this stuff done. No matter what level, if you're having success or at least staying busy, you got, generally you got a lot of good help from at least a small handful of really good people.
Yeah. How much does faith play in anything that you do in the music business or the songs that you write or things of that nature?
Faith Hill? No, I'm just kidding.
Yeah.
Man, it has to play a lot. It has to play a big role for me. I'm not someone who is super religious necessarily or anything like that, but I do have a spiritual relationship with the man above, and I feel like, from day one, I felt like he gave me a talent. I felt like he gave me a calling, and I felt like he's been there to guide me along the way, and and I also feel like, or at least I hope he's got a sense of humor.
Yeah. I ask all the guests on the show that question. But I wanted to ask you that question in particular because you tell a story on your website, rayscott.com, before singing one of the songs about driving down the interstate the wrong way and getting into a head-on crash. And but by the grace of God, and I'm not quoting, but I'm pretty close, but by the grace of God and his angels, you were spared and others weren't badly injured.
Where I grew up, the way I grew up and everything, I grew up in church. And I'm not a regular attender of church.
Me neither.
But I do believe, and I quite honestly, I'm one of these people that can't understand why some people wouldn't believe or would be so adamant that there is no God. That's something that, or creator. That's something that, I don't look at the beauty. Look, there's a lot of ugly in this world, but once you get past that, there's still a whole lot of beauty in this world. And hey, stand on top of a mountain in Switzerland and you tell me there's no God, and I'll tell you have no soul.
So Ray, okay. I really do appreciate you being on the Nashville Hype podcast. Is there anything else that's coming in your future? Or you've got tours coming up. I know you've got 2 more albums. We've discussed those a little bit. What else is happening in the life of Ray?
Well, for one thing, Paul, I want to just say what I used to say to my mom a lot, and that is, thanks for having me. I've got, like I was saying, there are 2 projects coming. Wrong Songs. It's going to be available. I want to say right now, probably early February. That's the plan, at least.
Okay.
And then later in the year, there's another project called Billboards and Brake Lights that I did with Mr. Moose Brown that I'm really proud of, and we'll be coming with that. And dates are still forming. If you go to my website, rayscott.com, you can find out anything you need. You can buy merch, you can do all that stuff, all the wonderful things that keep us guys alive. And I appreciate everybody who took the time to take a listen here.
You've been listening to the Nashville Hype Podcast. I'm your host, Paul King. You can find us at thenashvillehype.com. We're on all the socials, and the podcast can be heard on Apple, Spotify, Google, iHeart, and many other places. Thank you so much for tuning in.